pregnant wife was locked out of her own mansion with billionaire mistress took over everything. This is a story of secrets and betrayal, of love pushed to the very brink. Emily Stevenson, pregnant and hopeful for a bright future, came home one stormy evening only to find the gates of her own mansion locked against her. Through the iron bars, she could see another woman refined, confident, occupying the home Emily had built with her husband, Michael Bradford. In a whirlwind of suspicion and heartbreak, Emily discovered that her husband had welcomed a mistress into their sanctuary. Little did she know, the betrayal ran deeper than a simple affair. Prepare for revelations, tears, and the ultimate fight for justice. Rain hammered against the windshield as Emily Stevenson pulled into the long, tree-lined driveway of the Bradford estate. The headlights illuminated the wrought iron gates, glistening with droplets that refracted light like tiny diamonds. Normally, these gates would swing open at the press of a button, welcoming her into the sanctuary she shared with her husband, Michael. Today, however, they remained firmly shut. Puzzled, Emily reached for the gate opener clipped to her visor. She clicked the button once. Nothing happened. She tried again, still no response. The anxiety that had been stirring in the pit of her stomach all day began to churn. The trouble had started early that morning when she couldn't reach Michael by phone. His assistant, Josephine Mulligan, had mumbled something about an urgent business trip, then abruptly ended the call. Emily was 7 months pregnant, her ankles swollen, her back aching but more than physical discomfort. She felt an oppressive sense of unease. She pressed the gate opener again, but it refused to budge. The mansion lights were on. She could see them shining through the tall windows of the Georgian-style house. Shadows moved inside, indicating people were present. Was Michael throwing a party? And if so, why lock the gates? She lowered her window and tried the intercom. Static greeted her, no voice. She slammed the intercom button once more, her frustration escalating. The storm raged on, raindrops splashing onto her arm and soaking her sleeve. Lighting cracked in the distance. Moments later, a silhouette appeared on the mansion's porch. Through the dark, Emily recognized a woman's figure. She was slender, her posture assured, dressed in a silky robe that glowed in the lights. Emily's heart pounded. Who was this woman? Desperate for answers, Emily honked the horn. The woman cocked her head, as if considering whether to respond or not. Eventually, she lifted a cell phone to her ear and spoke into it. Emily's cell phone remained silent in her lap. She wasn't receiving a call. Then, in a moment that felt like slow motion, the woman turned on her heel and disappeared inside. For a brief second, Emily hoped that perhaps this was a friend of Michael's or a colleague from his real estate development firm who'd arrived unexpectedly. But who would lounge around in a robe inside someone else's home? Headlights flashed behind her. Another car was approaching. Emily recognized it as the staff driver, Richard Kim, who sometimes helped around the property. He rolled down his window and gave her a half-apologetic, half-wary glance. "Miss S. Bradford," he said, voice trembling in the gusty wind. "I wasn't aware you were coming tonight." "Coming tonight?" Emily thought, baffled. This was her home. Of course she was coming here. "Open the gates," she ordered. Richard hesitated. I'm sorry, ma'am, but I was told not to let anyone in." Shock bolted through Emily. "Who told you that? Michael?" Richard avoided her eyes. "Not exactly. Miss S. Bradford. Mr. Bradford's instructions came through Miss Clara Thompson." The name meant nothing to Emily. She'd never heard Michael mention a Clara Thompson, and she certainly wouldn't expect a total stranger to have the authority to lock her out of her own residence. The storm raged on, but a greater storm brewed inside Emily. Fear, outrage, and confusion collided in her chest. This was just the beginning of a nightmare she could never have anticipated. Several hours later, after fruitless arguments at the gate, after calls to Michael still went unanswered, Emily found herself in a nearby motel. feeling more alone than ever. She was drenched from the rain, her body shaking from cold and adrenaline. Even her unborn baby seemed restless within her, kicking against her taut belly. Sleep was impossible. She scrolled through her phone, reading texts and emails she had exchanged with Michael over the last few weeks. They had been discussing baby names, planning for the nursery, joking about Emily's new cravings for pickles with chocolate sauce. There was no hint of distress. Nothing suggested that her husband was drifting away or that he would allow someone else to occupy their mansion. Morning came, bringing a pale sun and an uneasy calm. Emily called Michael's office again. This time, Josephine sounded more defensive than dismissive. "Miss S. Bradford, I'm sure Michael will be in contact soon," she said. He left explicit instructions that he was not to be disturbed, not even by you. Emily's rage nearly boiled over, but she contained it. Yelling at Josephine wouldn't help. Instead, she reached out to their family attorney, Miss Catherine Willis, a woman who had helped them negotiate business contracts in the past. Catherine listened intently. "This is highly irregular," she said. "He can't legally lock you out if the property is in both your names. Let's find out what's going on." She agreed to make some calls, do some digging. Emily's next move was to drive over to her best friend's house. Rebecca Chang had known Emily since college. She opened the door to find Emily, eyes puffy from crying and exhaustion, one hand protectively cradling her belly. Without a word, Rebecca pulled her into a fierce hug. Over coffee, Emily recounted the events of the previous night, the locked gates, the mysterious woman, the staff's refusal to let her in. "That's insane," Rebecca said. "Michael is your husband. This is your home. How could he do something like that?" Emily stared at her mug, swirling the coffee. "I don't know. He's never been cruel. He's been stressed with work, but never this. Callous." The conversation was interrupted by a call from Catherine. "I've made contact with his office. Apparently, Michael has taken an indefinite leave of absence. The rumors suggest he's out of the country on a private matter. As for who is occupying the house, I'm told her name is indeed Clara Thompson, and she's not just some stranger. She's being introduced as Michael's fiancée." Emily's heart dropped. Fiancée? She was still legally his wife, and she was pregnant with his child. How could he have a fiancée? She pressed the phone closer to her ear as Catherine continued. "I'm still verifying, but it seems your husband took large sums of money out of your joint accounts in the last few weeks. He's purchased property under Clara Thompson's name. Something is very wrong here, Emily." Tears streamed down Emily's cheeks. It wasn't just betrayal, it was the systematic dismantling of everything she knew. She felt the baby shift. As if sensing her anguish, Rebecca placed a hand on Emily's. "We'll get to the bottom of this," she whispered. "I'm with you every step of the way." In the days that followed, Emily learned that Clara Thompson was no fleeting fling. She had known Michael for at least a year, working closely with him on a new development project in Paris. According to business travel logs, staff members who once reported to Emily now answered to Clara. Calls to Michael went unanswered. Any attempt to reclaim the mansion met with fierce opposition from newly hired security guards under Clara's orders. They refused Emily entry. What stunned Emily the most was how quickly her life had been upended. In a matter of days, she went from a happily married, expectant mother to an outcast, locked out of her own home. And behind all of it was a woman she'd never even heard of until now. Just who was Clara Thompson, and why was Michael allowing her to do this? Fueled by both a hunger for answers and the anguish of betrayal, Emily decided to pay a visit to the Bradford estate once more. This time, she brought the police. If Michael or Clara wanted to keep her out, they would have to explain themselves to law enforcement. However, the police informed her that because this was a civil matter involving property rights, there was little they could do without a court order. Emily produced documents showing that her name was on the house deed, but the responding officer merely shook his head. The occupant inside claims she has proof of ownership, that Mr. Bradford transferred his share to her recently. You'll need to resolve this in court. Shock replaced Emily's anger. How had the house deed been transferred? Legally, a spouse would need the other's consent if it was jointly owned, unless there were intricate legal loopholes or forged signatures. She felt ill at the possibility. "Ma'am, are you all right?" one of the officers asked, noticing Emily's pale complexion and trembling hands. She pressed a palm to her belly, trying to steady herself. "I'm fine, just stressed." Leaving in defeat, Emily's sense of isolation grew. This mansion had been her dream home, a place she envisioned raising a family. Now, it was like an impenetrable fortress under enemy control. Clara was not only occupying it, but also entertaining guests, giving the staff new instructions, and stepping into Emily's life without remorse. Later that day, while at Rebecca's house, Emily's phone buzzed with a text from an unfamiliar number. "Stay away from Michael. You have no idea what you're up against. CT." Emily felt the blood drain from her face. Clara had her phone number. Not only was Clara actively expelling Emily from her own life, but now she was sending threats. Emily's pregnant belly seemed even heavier with dread. She quickly blocked the number, but the damage was done. She realized she was dealing with a woman who didn't just want to steal her husband. She wanted to erase Emily altogether. As Emily scrambled to gather more evidence, she discovered a startling truth. The staff at the Bradford estate, people she had welcomed into her life, had sworn loyalty to Clara. Josephine Mulligan had always been polite to Emily, but was known to be fiercely devoted to Michael. Did Josephine also side with Clara now? Possibly, yes, given the abrupt end to phone calls and the tightly guarded secrets. Her heart panged with betrayal. She recalled staff parties in the mansion's rose garden, the laughter, the camaraderie. She'd always believed they were more than employees. They were practically family. Now, the same people who once greeted her each morning with a warm good day, Miss S. Bradford, couldn't even meet her eye. Not everyone deserted her, though. One of the older maids, Grace Caldwell, sent her a discreet email. "Miss S. Bradford, I don't have much time. Miss Thompson has taken over. She told us Mr. Bradford wants you gone. I don't believe it, but she's threatened to fire anyone who disobeys. Some of us fear for our jobs. She said you're unstable, that you'd harm the baby and yourself. I'm so sorry." The tears that fell from Emily's eyes were hot with pain. She realized in that moment Clara had spun a narrative that Emily was mentally unwell, painting her as a danger to herself and her unborn child. Emily could practically sense Clara's manipulative nature, weaving lies that could easily find traction among staff, worried about unemployment or legal trouble. Seething, Emily typed a quick reply. "Thank you, Grace. Your message means more than you know. Please stay safe." She pressed send, uncertain of what the future held, but resolute in her determination to expose Clara for the fraud she was. Desperate for answers, Emily embarked on a quest to find Michael Bradford. The notion that he could vanish without a word, especially with a child on the way, felt incomprehensible. If he was having an affair, why not confront Emily openly about a divorce? Why resort to such underhanded tactics? First, she checked the obvious: phone calls, text messages, emails. They all yielded the same dead end. Michael was unreachable. She started calling mutual friends, people they knew from their philanthropic circles, real estate conferences, even old college buddies who might have heard from him. Nobody had any information about his whereabouts. Some had also tried to reach Michael, only to be ignored. Emily's father, Harold Stevenson, was a retired lawyer in Charleston. Appalled by the news, he began making calls to his contacts. A few days later, he returned with a lead. A source at the airport says Michael boarded a private jet bound for Morocco 2 weeks ago. Return date unknown. Morocco? Emily tried to recall if Michael had ever discussed business there. She drew a blank. That same day, Catherine Willis dropped by with news of her own. I've confirmed that Michael purchased a property in Paris under Clara Thompson's name. The funds came from a shared account, but someone went to great lengths to hide this. The transaction was done through multiple shell companies. The revelations kept piling up, each more devastating than the last. Michael had stolen their marital assets to fund a luxurious life with Clara in Europe, and yet Clara was back at the mansion, enjoying Emily's rightful home. Where did that leave Emily and her unborn child? Fears began to creep in. Could Michael be in trouble? Was Clara blackmailing him? Or had he willingly orchestrated this betrayal? The possibilities were endless and exhausting. Adding to Emily's turmoil, her unborn baby's due date crept closer. She woke each morning feeling the weight of her situation, literally and emotionally. Yet, amid the heartbreak, Emily resolved not to succumb to despair. She sought out new ways to locate her husband, including hiring a private investigator named Robert Evans. He had a reputation for being discreet and tenacious, traits Emily desperately needed. Robert's strategy began with tracing financial transactions, credit card usage, wire transfers, real estate deeds. After weeks of meticulous searching, he found a clue: a real estate tax payment made on an apartment in Marrakech, Morocco. It was linked to an offshore account bearing Michael's signature. Emily's heart pounded when she heard the news. While on one hand, confirmation that Michael was likely in Morocco felt like a relief, it proved he was alive on the other. It was crushing proof he had deliberately abandoned her. "Do you want me to go further?" Robert asked, his face filled with empathy. "I can try to confirm that he's there physically, get photographic evidence, maybe even find out if he's with Miss Thompson. But that kind of operation won't be cheap." Emily hesitated. Money was growing tight. Her personal bank account was separate from the joint account, but she didn't have unlimited funds. Much of her financial security was tied to the business holdings she shared with Michael Holdings that might now be under Clara's influence. She nodded. "Yes, keep searching. I need to know the truth." She was determined to find a way to recover what was rightfully hers, not just for her own sake, but for the child she carried. Before the chaos and heartbreak, Emily and Michael had been a golden couple. They met at a gala event benefiting a local children's hospital. Emily had been representing her father's legal firm, while Michael was a rising star in real estate development. He was charming, confident, and surprisingly humble for a man with such aspirations. He offered Emily a glass of champagne, and they spent the night discussing everything from travel dreams to philanthropic visions. When they decided to marry 2 years later, the ceremony was held in a grand garden overlooking the sea in Cape Cod. Emily wore a lace gown that shimmered under the summer sun, and Michael couldn't take his eyes off her. Their honeymoon in Greece felt like something out of a romance novel. They talked about building a life together that would blend his business acumen with her legal background, forming an unstoppable partnership. For years, it was nearly perfect. They traveled widely, investing in properties around the globe. Michael was passionate about architecture. Emily was enthralled by the artistry of old buildings. Together, they restored a crumbling chateau in the French countryside, which later became an exclusive boutique hotel. It was during those days in France that Emily first heard the name Clara Thompson. Michael described her as a talented architect from London who was interested in partnering with them. Emily never imagined that name would one day be synonymous with betrayal and heartbreak. As Emily sat in Rebecca's living room, these memories played like a film reel in her mind. She couldn't reconcile the Michael she once knew, an affectionate, dedicated partner, with the man who had now abandoned her. She knew people changed, relationships evolved, and not always for the better. But this was too extreme, too calculated, too cruel. Rebecca interrupted her thoughts with a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Hey," she said softly, "you know you can stay here as long as you need. Don't worry about imposing." Emily squeezed her friend's hand. "Thank you," she whispered. "I don't know what I'd do without you." A part of her yearned for the simpler days when she and Michael tackled life's hurdles side by side. She could still feel the ocean breeze on that Cape Cod wedding day, still remember the warmth of his vows. She placed a protective hand on her abdomen, feeling the flutter of the baby. "You'll be safe," she murmured, a promise to her unborn child. "No matter what happens, I'll protect you." The mounting stress weighed heavily on Emily, both physically and mentally. Her OB-GYN, Dr. Sarah Carter, voiced concern during Emily's next checkup. "Your blood pressure is a bit high, which isn't unusual given the circumstances, but we need to keep it monitored. The baby seems healthy for now, but you have to find ways to reduce stress." Emily offered a sad laugh. Easier said than done. Nevertheless, she took Dr. Carter's advice seriously. She enrolled in prenatal yoga classes and tried deep breathing exercises. She also made an appointment with a therapist, Dr. Marianne Russell, to help her navigate the emotional whirlwind. Meanwhile, Robert Evans, the private investigator, returned with new intelligence. Michael had been sighted in Marrakesh with a group of businessmen, but there was no sign of Clara Thompson at his side. Robert even managed to snap a grainy photograph of Michael stepping into a Range Rover. He looked thinner, more on edge. Emily stared at the photo for a long time. Maybe Michael was in trouble. Maybe he wasn't the mastermind behind these twisted events. Perhaps Clara had manipulated or threatened him. Hope flickered, but she quickly doused it. The facts remained. Clara was at the mansion, and Michael hadn't spoken a word to Emily in weeks. Catherine Willis had better news on the legal front. "We filed a motion to retake possession of the property. We're arguing that Clara Thompson's claim is illegitimate. The hearing is in 3 weeks. If we can present evidence of the original deed and highlight any forgery, we should have a strong case." 3 weeks. Emily closed her eyes, relief mingling with apprehension. She would be nearly 8 months pregnant by then. The stress of a court battle wouldn't be easy on her health. But she had no choice. This was her life, her child's future. She needed to stand her ground. In the meantime, Catherine suggested they file a motion to freeze the joint accounts so Clara couldn't drain them further. They hoped it wasn't too late. Emily prayed that some of their assets remained, enough to support her and the baby should the worst come to pass. Outside the courthouse, a swarm of reporters awaited a high-profile case unrelated to Emily's, but she couldn't help feeling uneasy. Her story might soon become public scandal, pregnant heiress locked out of mansion by mistress. The tabloids would feast on it. That thought alone made her stomach churn. At night, she lay awake on Rebecca's couch, hand on her belly, speaking softly to the child within. She recounted memories, sang lullabies, anything to soothe the baby and herself. In the silent darkness, she prayed that justice would prevail. She knew it wouldn't be a simple victory, but perhaps, in the swirl of heartbreak and betrayal, she could find the strength to rebuild her life. The week before the court hearing, Emily received a package with no return address. Inside was a set of photographs. Each depicted Michael and Clara in various intimate settings, a candlelit dinner in Paris, a yacht party on the Mediterranean, strolling hand in hand through Venice. Emily's hands trembled as she flipped through the images, her stomach roiling with nausea. Mixed in with the photos was a letter, typed in a neat font. "Emily, get used to seeing us together. You'll never reclaim what's no longer yours. Clara, tears coursed down Emily's cheeks as she stared at the letter. Her heartbreak gave way to anger. Clara was taunting her, invading her life not just physically, but psychologically. What kind of person went out of their way to torment a pregnant woman? Rebecca found Emily in tears, clutching the photographs. Wordlessly, she gathered the evidence to pass along to Catherine. Perhaps they could use Clara's letter to illustrate her malicious intent, but the damage was done. Emily spent the rest of the day battling an overwhelming sense of inadequacy, as though she had failed in her marriage, in her ability to hold Michael's love. That evening, Emily opened her laptop and poured out her emotions in an email draft to Michael. She wrote paragraphs upon paragraphs, demanding answers, pleading for the truth, expressing her anguish at being cast aside. She never sent it. She didn't even know if Michael still used the same email. She simply needed an outlet for her torment. The following day, Emily received a second anonymous package. This time, it contained documents, wire transfers from the joint account to multiple shell companies, each connected to Clara. A small post-it note read, "For the hearing, prove she's a thief." No signature. Emily showed the documents to Catherine and Robert. "Any idea who sent these?" she asked. Brows knitted in confusion. Robert frowned. "No clue. But someone on the inside must be sympathetic to your cause. Possibly a staff member or even a business associate of Michael's who disagrees with what's happening." They had no time to unravel the source. The hearing loomed. Emily clutched the documents like lifelines. If these records were genuine, they could dismantle any claim Clara had on the property. They showcased blatant financial manipulation and might even suggest coercion of Michael's assets. Yet one question lingered. If Michael truly was coerced, wouldn't he have tried to contact Emily somehow? Every time she tried to hold on to the possibility that Michael was a victim, the mounting evidence suggested otherwise. Her heartbreak was overshadowed by a stark reality. She was about to enter a legal war against the man she had once loved more than anything. The day of the hearing arrived with a drizzle of rain, reminiscent of the night Emily was first locked out of her home. Dressed in a simple navy maternity dress, Emily felt nerves knot in her stomach as she and Catherine entered the courthouse. Her father, Harold, accompanied them for support. To Emily's astonishment, Clara Thompson showed up in person, flanked by a team of lawyers. She wore a tailored black suit, her hair impeccably styled. She looked every inch the mistress-turned-tycoon, exuding confidence that bordered on arrogance. Catherine presented the case succinctly. The property deed was co-owned by Emily and Michael. Any transfer to Clara was invalid without Emily's consent. The provided wire transfers illustrated a potentially fraudulent scheme. Clara's attorneys responded with an avalanche of paperwork, claiming that Michael had full authority to act on behalf of their marital assets. They brandished alleged documents where Emily's signature appeared, giving Michael power of attorney. The color drained from Emily's face. She'd never signed such a thing. Were her signatures forged? Catherine launched into a withering cross-examination. "Miss Thompson, can you explain how you came to occupy the Bradford estate and under whose invitation?" Clara smiled coldly. "I was invited by Michael himself. He informed me that his marriage was over and that I would now be the rightful lady of the house." Emily gripped the edge of the table, nails digging into the wood. She felt her baby kick, a sharp reminder to stay composed. "Miss Bradford," the judge said, turning his attention to Emily, "when was the last time you spoke directly with your husband?" Emily's voice trembled. "Nearly 6 weeks ago, Your Honor. He left on what he claimed was a business trip, and I've had no direct communication with him since. He's unreachable." Clara's attorney seized upon that. "If Mr. Bradford is out of the country on vital business, we can't rely on his immediate presence to verify these claims. He has, however, provided Miss Thompson with documents indicating she is entitled to the property. Catherine countered by presenting the wire transfers, the suspicious timeline, and the fact that the staff had been given new instructions to bar Emily from her own home. The judge listened intently, scribbling notes. After hours of testimonies and scrutiny of documents, the judge declared that further investigation was necessary. However, he was sympathetic to Emily's plight. He issued an interim order preventing Clara from altering the property or removing assets until the matter was resolved. He also demanded that Michael appear within 30 days for a final hearing or risk default judgment. It wasn't a complete victory, but Emily felt a surge of relief. At least Clara no longer had free rein. Emily had hoped to walk away that day with the right to return home, but the judge played it safe, worried about the contradictory paperwork that suggested Emily may have relinquished her rights. As the hearing concluded, Clara passed by Emily, pausing only to deliver a parting blow. "I hope the stress doesn't affect your baby," she cooed, a saccharine smile on her lips. Emily clenched her fists, her eyes brimming with tears. She refused to give Clara the satisfaction of a response. In the aftermath of the hearing, Emily found herself caught in a whirlwind of opinions. The local media had caught wind of the story. Headlines like "Socialite's Mansion Under Siege" by Mistress circulated on tabloid sites. Strangers on the internet debated whether Emily was a victim or complicit in some twisted game of marital warfare. Amid the chaos, Emily discovered unexpected allies. Former staff members who had left the mansion prior to Clara's takeover reached out to offer support or share documents that might help Emily's case. One of them, a gardener named Miguel Rodriguez, claimed he overheard conversations suggesting that Clara had manipulated Michael with blackmail. The specifics were unclear, but any lead was valuable. Yet not everyone was on Emily's side. Josephine Mulligan, Michael's assistant, publicly defended Clara, insisting that Mr. Bradford has found his soulmate and Emily was never a fit partner for him. The betrayal stung. Emily had always been kind to Josephine, offering her a raise just the previous year. Complicating matters further, Emily began receiving cryptic emails from an anonymous source. They hinted at a scandal involving Michael's business dealings, suggesting he was fleeing from more than just a failing marriage. Could Michael be running from legal trouble, leaving Clara to do the dirty work at home? Determined to protect herself and her unborn child, Emily scheduled another meeting with Robert Evans. They sat in a dimly lit cafe, away from prying eyes. Robert looked grave. "I've uncovered rumors that Michael may have been involved in a money laundering scheme connected to international real estate transactions. If true, Clara might hold incriminating evidence. She could be using it to control him." Emily felt her pulse quicken. Had Michael turned to crime, or had he been desperate to save a failing business, only to get trapped? Either way, it didn't change the reality that Emily's life had been hijacked. "We need solid proof," she said. "If Clara is blackmailing Michael, we can blow her claims out of the water and reclaim the mansion." But a nagging doubt persisted. If Michael was truly coerced, why hadn't he warned Emily, or at least left a cryptic message? Perhaps he didn't trust anyone, not even her. A week later, as Emily prepared for yet another legal meeting, she received an email from an untraceable address. "Meet me at the Blue Orchid Lounge, 9 p.m. tonight. Come alone." A friend, Rebecca, and Catherine both cautioned her against going. It could be a trap, but Emily's gut told her this was the inside contact who had been sending the documents. This might be her best chance to uncover the truth. Clad in a simple coat that masked her pregnancy as much as possible, Emily slipped into the lounge's dim interior. Smoke and low jazz music enveloped her. She chose a corner booth, scanning the room. Eventually, a man wearing a dark fedora approached, his face partly concealed by the club's shadows. "Miss S. Bradford?" he asked softly. Emily nodded, Heart pounding, he lowered himself into the seat across from her. "I can't reveal my full identity," he began. "Let's just say I'm connected to Michael's business operations. I learned that Clara set him up, lured him into a fraudulent deal with overseas investors. When the scheme collapsed, Michael was left holding the bag. He faced legal repercussions that could ruin him. Clara offered a way out. She'd handle the fallout if he agreed to sign over assets to her. He refused at first, but she threatened to destroy him completely, claiming he'd go to prison and lose everything. Emily's throat tightened. "So he did it to protect himself from prosecution?" The man paused. "Yes, and possibly to protect you as well. Clara said she'd release false records implicating you in the laundering if Michael didn't cooperate. But once he signed the paperwork, she took advantage. She persuaded him to leave the country to negotiate some hush-money deals with the investors he'd burned. Meanwhile, she's here, seizing everything." Tears welled in Emily's eyes. "Why not just tell me?" The man shrugged sadly. Michael was ashamed. "Also, Clara has eyes everywhere. He might have feared contacting you would put you at risk. But I've grown disgusted watching Clara's cruelty. Especially now that you're pregnant. Michael never wanted this." "How do I stop her?" Emily demanded, desperation coloring her voice. He reached inside his coat and slid a USB drive across the table. "This contains correspondences, audio recordings, and other evidence showing Clara manipulated and blackmailed Michael. Use it wisely. Be cautious. Clara has powerful friends. She won't go down without a fight." Emily's fingers closed around the USB. "Thank you," she whispered, tears threatening to spill. He stood to leave. "You're welcome. Good luck, Mrs. Bradford. Expose her, and maybe you'll save Michael from himself." Early the next morning, Emily rushed the USB drive to Catherine's office. The lawyer's eyes widened as she examined the trove of files, emails detailing how Clara coerced Michael into illegal transactions, voice memos where Michael admitted he felt trapped, even a video snippet showing Clara dictating terms to Michael. "This changes everything," Catherine breathed, her excitement barely contained. "We can request an emergency hearing, present this evidence, and overturn any claim Clara has to your property or assets. We can also force Michael to come forward." Emily felt a flutter of hope. For the first time in weeks, she imagined a future where she could return to her home, where Michael might be redeemed, or at least not wholly lost to her. However, Catherine warned her, "We have to be prepared for a fight. Clara will likely counter that these recordings are fabricated. We'll need a digital forensics expert to verify their authenticity. And once she learns we have this, she may retaliate viciously." Emily nodded, steeling herself for the battle ahead. "We have no choice." They filed the motion, requesting an expedited court date. The hearing was set for 1 week later, causing a flurry of activity. Catherine's team worked around the clock to compile a bulletproof case. Meanwhile, Emily navigated her daily life with a sense of guarded optimism. She even felt confident enough to shop for a few baby items, small tokens of normalcy amidst the chaos. Then came a knock on Rebecca's door one evening. Emily answered, expecting a delivery. Instead, she found herself face to face with Clara Thompson. Dressed in a sleek coat, Clara smirked as she looked down at Emily's swollen belly. "So, you've gone to extremes," Clara said coolly, stepping forward as if she owned the place. Emily blocked her path, refusing to let her inside. "Get away from me!" Emily hissed. Clara's gaze flickered with contempt. "You think you've got some grand evidence? You have no idea who you're dealing with. I can make this entire thing disappear with a few phone calls." Emily's heart hammered. She knew Clara was dangerous, but to have her show up like this, threatening her on her doorstep, was unnerving. "Leave, or I'll call the police," Emily spat, holding her phone up as a warning. Clara laughed, a hollow sound. "Don't say I didn't warn you. You should have stayed quiet." Now you'll regret it." She turned on her heel and sauntered away into the night. Emily locked the door, trembling. In her hand, the phone felt like a flimsy shield against the storm that was Clara Thompson. On the morning of the emergency hearing, Emily's nerves felt frayed. She was now just shy of 8 months pregnant, her body heavy with the life she carried, her mind overloaded with stress. Still, she had to see this through. The courtroom was packed. Reporters, curious onlookers, and even some of Michael's business associates filled the benches. Clara arrived flanked by her lawyers, her face set in a grimace that revealed she knew the stakes were high. Catherine introduced the new evidence. Digital forensic specialists testified that the audio recordings and emails were authentic. The court heard Michael's voice, laced with desperation as he spoke about being blackmailed, about protecting Emily from this mess. A hush fell over the courtroom as the weight of betrayal and manipulation became palpable. Clara's attorneys tried to discredit the evidence, questioning the chain of custody. But Catherine countered effectively, demonstrating that the files came from a credible inside source. Emily, watching from her seat, felt her spirits lift. Then Clara took the stand. She painted herself as the true victim, insisting that Michael had lied to her about his marital status and forced her to sign documents she barely understood. But the judge wasn't convinced. The voice recordings were clear. She had threatened Michael, cornering him into compliance. Emails with her digital signature further implicated her in orchestrating the scheme. Finally, the judge announced his decision. He found compelling evidence that Clara Thompson had engaged in fraud, blackmail, and illegal transfer of marital property. He declared that Emily and Michael remained the rightful owners of the mansion and that Clara was to vacate immediately. Furthermore, the judge issued a warrant for Michael's appearance in court to address his involvement in the overseas transactions. Relief washed over Emily in waves. She fought back tears. Clara stood stone-faced, her carefully constructed facade cracking. For a moment, their eyes met. Emily expected to see anger or sorrow, but all she saw was cold, unbridled hatred. As the bailiffs moved to escort Clara out, she pointed a manicured finger at Emily. "This isn't over," she snarled. "Michael will pay, and so will you." In the days following the successful hearing, Emily returned to the Bradford estate. The gates, finally open, felt like they belonged to her once again. She walked through the grand foyer, noticing a layer of dust from weeks of neglect. Yet the sense of homecoming was overwhelming. She placed a hand on her belly. "We're back," she whispered to her baby, tears of joy sliding down her face. Some of the old staff members had been laid off or replaced during Clara's takeover, but Grace Caldwell remained. She greeted Emily with a relieved smile. "Welcome home, Mrs. Bradford," she said, voice quavering with emotion. Several other loyal employees also returned, helping to restore the mansion to order. Still, Michael was nowhere to be found. Emily worried about his safety. Through Catherine, she learned that Michael's attorneys in Morocco were negotiating some form of plea deal. The blackmail might have compelled him to commit crimes, but he wasn't entirely innocent. He could face hefty fines or even jail time, depending on the outcome, days stretched into weeks. Emily found herself preparing for the baby's arrival with a mixture of excitement and sadness. She set up the nursery in soft pastel colors, ignoring the pang in her heart that Michael wasn't there to help. She tried calling his old number, emailing him, even sending a letter through a courier to the Marrakesh address uncovered by Robert Evans. No response. One afternoon, a battered envelope arrived at the mansion, addressed to Emily. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a handwritten message. "Emily, I'm sorry for everything. I wanted to protect you, but in the end, I caused you immeasurable pain. Clara threatened to destroy us both, but I should have trusted you. I'm ready to face the consequences, and atone for what I've done. I still love you. Take care of our child. Michael, she read it 3 times, tears forming anew. The letter offered both solace and heartbreak. He was alive, aware of his wrongdoing, and prepared to face the repercussions. She hoped it wasn't too late for him to rebuild some semblance of a life, whether with or without her. 2 weeks later, Michael appeared at the estate without warning. It was dusk when Emily heard the front doors open. She walked into the foyer to find him standing there, looking disheveled and gaunt. Dark circles ringed his eyes, and his once impeccable suits were replaced by wrinkled attire. "Emily," he said, voice breaking. She opened her mouth to speak, but found she had no words. Her emotions were a tumult of anger, relief, sorrow, and love. Finally, she managed a single question: why? Michael exhaled, tears glistening. "I was stupid, greedy. I got involved in deals I didn't fully understand. When things went south, Clara, she had evidence that could ruin me. I thought, if I kept you out of it, you'd be safe. She convinced me to lock you out, to sign over properties, telling me it was the only way to protect you and the baby from the fallout." Emily shook her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. "You betrayed me. You let her take everything. I was forced to fight for our home, for our future." "I know," he whispered, voice choked. "Every day I was away, I hated myself. But I was trapped." She had powerful connections. "Even now, I'm not sure how I managed to slip away to come here." She studied him, weighing the sincerity in his gaze. She could see the torment etched into his face. Slowly, she nodded. "The court found her out. She's been charged. Your dealings, you might still face consequences. The judge wants you to appear in court." Michael nodded solemnly. "I will. I'm ready." Standing there, they both realized that even though the immediate crisis was over, Clara had been exposed. A long road of healing lay ahead. Emily placed a protective hand on her belly. "I'm due soon," she said softly. Michael's eyes flickered with longing and regret. "Can I be there for you?" She hesitated, tears slipping down her face. "I don't have all the answers," she admitted. "But you're the baby's father. I won't deny you that." He stepped forward hesitantly. He gently placed his hand on her abdomen, feeling the baby's kick. For a moment, the mansion was silent, the storm of recent weeks giving way to a fragile peace. A month later, Emily gave birth to a healthy baby girl, named Sophia Grace Bradford. She was born in the very mansion that Emily had once been locked out of. Michael, true to his word, was there, holding Emily's hand. Despite the emotional wounds between them, the moment Sophia entered the world was tinged with hope. Clara Thompson faced multiple criminal charges, and the court froze her assets. She raged publicly, blaming Michael and Emily for conspiring against her, but no one believed her lies anymore. The story of her scheming takeover attempt made headlines for weeks, though eventually the media moved on. Michael cooperated with authorities investigating the money laundering and fraudulent deals. He struck a plea bargain, agreeing to pay substantial restitution. He would forever bear the burden of regret and the stain on his professional reputation, but it was a necessary step toward redemption. As for Emily, rebuilding her life was no simple task. The emotional scars were profound. Therapy sessions with Dr. Marianne Russell continued, helping her navigate the tangled web of love and betrayal. Though she allowed Michael to be present in their daughter's life, she was still uncertain about the future of their marriage. Gradually, Michael proved himself. He spent long nights rocking Sophia to sleep, took on the financial and legal responsibilities for his mistakes, and offered Emily sincere apologies, not once but repeatedly, every day. Over time, Emily found herself letting him inch closer, albeit with caution. One crisp autumn evening, they strolled through the restored rose garden behind the mansion, Sophia gurgling happily in her stroller. Emily paused by a blooming bush, trailing her fingers over the soft petals. Michael stood by her side, silent, but present in a way he hadn't been for months. "I don't know if I can ever forget what you did," Emily said quietly, "but I'm trying to forgive." Michael placed a hand gently over hers. "I understand. I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make it up to you and to our daughter." They continued walking, the future uncertain yet full of possibilities. The darkest chapters were behind them, and while the scars remained, they also served as a testament to Emily's resilience and unwavering love for her child, for the life she had built, and perhaps, someday, for Michael once more. Thank you for accompanying Emily on her emotional journey from the anguish of being locked out of her own mansion to the triumph of reclaiming her home, her dignity, and the future of her child. This rollercoaster tale reminds us that even in the darkest hours, courage and determination can break through the grip of deceit. In the end, the storm clouds parted, paving the way for redemption, renewal, and cautious hope. If you found this story gripping, moving, or inspiring, please take a moment to support this channel. Hit that like button to let us know you enjoyed it. Don't forget to share with friends who love real-life drama and powerful redemption arcs. And, most importantly, be sure to subscribe for more incredible stories of survival, resilience, and the extraordinary power of the human spirit. Your support keeps these stories alive. Thank you,